I'm not saying the entire this thing, but yeah, predominantly we don't read these gems which they have predicted 50 years back, I should say. So thank you so much, and I request everybody to spend some time and read these books which were written long back by Shri Ram Swarupji and Star. So now we move on to our next speaker, Shri Neeraj Atri ji. So Neeraj Atri ji is the president of National Center for Historical Research and Comparative Studies, which is based out of Chandigarh, and he has written a beautiful book called Brainwash Republic. He has been fighting and has fought against distortion of history by NCERT without any expectation. He runs a YouTube channel where he speaks out truths about Islam, and he interviews a lot of people who also expose this religion. So I welcome Neeraj Atri ji. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Shinaji. Thanks a lot. I was in some other conference. That is why I missed listening to what Conrad had to say, because I really love to read what he writes, and I consider him one of the most wonderful authors, and suggest everybody to read Conrad, and of course Sitaram Goyal and Ram Swarupji should be read. And okay, so where do we start? Rishikesh ji?
It's yours, sir. Red, green, and white. So it's your. You can speak on whatever you feel is appropriate, I think. And yeah.
Okay, you're kind enough to say so. Right now, see, two things are happening simultaneously. One is this discussion which is going on, a conference which is going on to dismantle Hindutva. Now, when we talk about propaganda, there is a term which is known as euphemism. That you use a different word which actually means something else. So when they are trying to say dismantling Hindutva, actually they are targeting Hinduism. And the reason probably is that India, the Indic civilization, Indian civilization, Hindu civilization, Sanatan civilization, there are many different names. But what we must remember is that they are trying to complete their unfinished agenda. What was that unfinished agenda? For that, you can just go through any of the books of the two prophetic creeds. One is, okay, just a minute. Is that okay now?
Yes, Neeraj. Yeah, please go ahead.
So now, if you read any of the two prophetic books, it may be Bible, it may be Quran. What they say is that it is us versus them. So in a sense, since we are idolaters, if you look at the entire Judeo-biblical tradition, it is about otherization of everybody who is not subscribing to their worldview or their cosmology or their way of thinking. And since they have wiped out most of the civilizations which existed 2000 years ago on the surface of this planet, we are the only unfinished agenda that they are after. Now, earlier what they were doing was they were using weapons. It was swords earlier, then they switched over to guns. But now with the change in the world order, using guns or weapons is not so easy. That is why they've shifted to the latest mode of warfare, which is psychological warfare or propaganda. And this is done either through academic circles or through mass media. And the one conference that we are right now discussing about is they're taking the academic route. Although very large number of universities have withdrawn their hands or pulled back their hands once they came to know, or they were forced to take a stand. So that is, I would say that that is some kind of a victory for all those who are supporting Hinduism or Hindutva. And but now the question arises that how can academia be allowed to do something as blatant as discussing something which is not directly hurting them? If you look at the website which they've created for this event, it could have been very funny had it been not so tragic. They're saying, are you being bothered by trolls? So trolling, trolling is being considered terrorism. Whereas at the same time, we can see that a 20 years long war, which West had perpetrated on Afghanistan, they've lost it terribly. And that very Taliban, that very Afghanistan is today installing a new government. There could have been nothing more ironic than this. And had we not been the party who's at target, it would have been a comedy of sorts for us. Now, when we talk of the unfinished agenda of either Islamist tradition or Judeo-biblical tradition, what we have to remember is that nowadays there are a few buzzwords. The buzzwords are plurality, pluralism, multiculturalism, equality, equanimity, equity. And if you notice or you go through the content of these books, again, I'll say Bible or Quran, you will notice that they do not subscribe to any of these lofty ideas which are being used as buzzwords nowadays. In fact, if you notice, one of the subtitles is misogyny in this conference. Now, you just have to open up these two books and look at the long history of these two traditions. They have been thoroughly, outrightly misogynistic, in which it is absolutely blatantly stated that woman is to be treated as an enticer, because she was the one who was responsible for Adam to bite the forbidden fruit. And that is why she is given a role which is subordinate to man. She is always portrayed as the evil temptress who was responsible for the original sin. And likewise, if you look at the injunctions of Quran regarding women, again, it is same that she has to play a subordinate role as far as or vis-a-vis her male counterparts or males. And surprisingly enough, they have the gall to talk about dismantling Hindutva instead of talking about dismantling global jihad or any such thing. Well, they can do it because they've got their rights. Now, why is it taking place on 9/11? There can be many reasons, but one of them can be that they're trying to take the spotlight away from the Islamic ideology. Right now, what has happened is that for last 20 years, the world has been analyzing the contents of Islam. Historically, what had happened was during the colonial period, and especially in 1920s, 100 years ago, the Islamic Caliphate had been wiped out and Islam had almost been written off. But one peculiar thing happened in our subcontinent itself. when Second World War ended and a very large number of our countrymen were fighting for freedom from Britishers, Mahatma Gandhi started a movement which was called Khilafat movement. It had nothing to do with politics of India. It had nothing to do with colonialism. It was a pan-Islamic movement. The stated objective was to install a caliphate or a khilafat so that the entire Muslim population can have a khalifa or an Amirul Mu'minin, so to say. Before that, prior to that, the Islamic theologians were not considered a part of mainstream politics. Because before the advent of Mahatma Gandhi, the reins of Congress were in the hands of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Although he also had that streak of appeasement within his body politic, but it was not so blatant as Gandhiji did it. And in fact, that has sown the seeds for what we are witnessing today. Some people sometimes argue that it sounds to be a little far-fetched, but if you look at the entire trajectory of our history, you will notice that legitimacy was provided to the Ali brothers by Gandhiji's movement, which is known as Khilafat movement, or which is also called non-cooperation movement. Since then, the most obscurantist of persons, Maulanas and Maulvis, took the center stage, and their belligerence has been growing since then. And I although it is in the realm of speculation, but still I would like to speculate that had Gandhiji not given them this charge of that movement, we would have been witnessing an entirely different world today. And from there you can trace the setting up of Darul Uloom in Deoband. And from Darul Uloom Deoband, the entire Taliban movement has started. And so, in effect, if we can stretch it if we can, I would not call it stretching, I would say that it is a logical conclusion that Gandhi's legitimacy, which was provided to Maulanas, that led to formation of Darul Uloom Deoband. And Darul Uloom Deoband gave rise to Taliban, and that is why today we are witnessing this problem the world over. Now, this is a very embarrassing situation for a very large number of world forces. And especially it is very embarrassing for the proponents of Islam who would like to deflect attention from their ideology to something else. And what could have been a better option than something like Hindutva? Because Hindus are not known to assassinate people, they're not known to kill, they're not known to perpetrate riots on streets. That is why they can be called different names. A conference can be held to uproot or dismantle Hindutva, and the organizers will not have to face the heat of any terrorist organization. So they've done it very smartly. And secondly, if we look at it purely from a commercial aspect, it's been a success. They said dismantling Hindutva, and we all started reacting to it. And they were able to, if it was a marketing gimmick, then I would give them 100 out of 100 marks, because it has been surely very, very successful. And as a result, what has happened is, when we all should have been talking about jihad, global jihad, Islamic jihad, instead we have been put on the back foot. We've been pushed against the wall, and we are talking about this conference and specifically focusing on Hindutva. That is why I think we should not play into their hands, and we should always try to bring the spotlight from where they are trying to remove it. See, what they do is there is a very subtle trick that they play. Although this one is blatant, I'm moving to something else now. What they say is that let us not demonize Muslims. Let us not victimize Muslims. Let us not invisibilize Muslims. Such nice sounding terms are used. And I agree with them that we should not be targeting Muslims. We should not be demonizing Muslims because birth in a Muslim family is an accident. No individual has any control over it. He or she could have been born in a Hindu family, in a Christian family, in a Muslim family. So just because he or she took birth in a Muslim family does not automatically make him or her a terrorist. 100% agreed. But what they do is they shift the spotlight from Islam to Muslims. We should always keep on insisting that we are going to talk about Islam. We're not going to talk about Muslims. And that is the only way to defeat them. Something which they cannot defend. Of course, I try to defend it by a few lies, and I'll try to share them over here if the time permits. There are only 3 verses in the entire Quran which can be somehow used deceptively to prove that Quran talks about peace and Islam is a religion of peace. One of them is the very famous verse, which is from chapter 5. It's called verse number 32. It has been used by various apologists of Islam. What they claim is that Quran says if someone kills one human being, he's killed entire humanity. And if he saves one human being, he has saved entire humanity. So what can be more inclusive than this statement? Now, there is a very interesting anecdote behind this. In 2011, that means 10 years ago, a movie was released in our country. My name is Khan and I'm not a terrorist. In this movie, they have used this particular verse. So what is so interesting about it? It is that Shah Rukh Khan and all the people behind this movie, they have their stated objective. They said that we made this movie because at that time there was a very wrong notion about Islam and we wanted to dispel these misconceptions about Islam. And Shah Rukh Khan has been on record stating that since 9/11, there was this negative stereotyping of Muslims. Now look at the time gap from 2001 when 9/11 happened to 2011 when the movie came. In between, 26/11 also happened when Kasab and party attacked Mumbai. In 2007, Shah Rukh Khan was invited on national television to counteract the anger that every Indian was feeling, the indignation that all of us had. How could they invade our country? So Shah Rukh Khan at that time also said that, okay, what I'm going to do is Islam is very good religion. It is a religion of peace. It doesn't teach anything bad. And then he said, okay, I'm going to quote a few verses from Quran. Now, instead of quoting a few verses, he quoted this single verse in 2007. So from 1 to 7, it is 6 years. Then from 7 to 11, additional 4 years. A span of 10 years. Now, Quran is not a very big book. It has 6,236 verses. In 10 years, you can read every word of it, and you can take out all the verses which are peaceful. Right? Now, just pause for a minute. If anybody has to prove that Hinduism does not talk about violence, what would you do? Take out Bhagavad Gita, which is a very small book, and you can quote hundreds of shlokas from Bhagavad Gita stating that it teaches peace. Take entire Mahabharata. You can quote chapter after chapter that we are talking of peace. Pick out Upanishads. They give all of these books give messages of peace. And just open any page randomly, you will find out something where they are talking about universalism, humanism, humanity. And talking about Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, Vishwa ka kalyan ho, praniyon mein sadbhavna ho, that is the entire narrative of Hindu Dharma. But here you have the apologists of Islam, the spokespersons of Islam. They take 10 long years. They have only one book to check. And in these 10 years, they are able to bring only one verse. And even that verse is not quoted completely. What is that verse? Just give me 2 seconds. I'll read that out for you, what it actually says. That will give you an idea what they are trying to defend or why are they conducting such conferences. Okay, here it is. I have in front of me. I'll quote it in English itself. We decreed upon the children of Israel. That means this particular statement is for children of Israel, that is for Jews, that whoever kills a soul, unless for a soul or for corruption in the land. What it means is that Quran is saying that if you kill somebody, there are 2 exceptions. One exception is that if you're killing somebody because you're taking a revenge. And second is if the other person is causing some corruption, which is the Islamic deception of saying that somebody is talking against Islam or fighting against Islam. Then it is as if he had slain entire mankind. Now, when you read it in its entirety, you will notice that there is nothing peaceful in this message. That is the kind of deception they've been perpetrating. And the second part is again saying there are these 2 caveats. Okay. The caveat is that if you're taking revenge, then you can kill. This is the peaceful verse which they take out of Quran. And that is how they try to perpetrate Islam to be a peaceful religion. And apart from that, there are 2 more verses which we sometimes quote. One is from chapter 2, verse number 256. There is no compulsion in religion. That is also what they try to quote. Now, when they quote only this much, there is no compulsion in religion, they're trying to say that all those people who have been converted, they've not been converted on the point of sword. They've been converted. They converted out of their own free will. It's 2:256. And now what is the actual verse? There shall be no compulsion in religion. The right course has become clear from the wrong. So whoever disbelieves in Taghut and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handhold with no break in it. Again, that supremacist ideology comes out when you read the entire verse. What they're saying is that if you are not believing in Allah, then you are shaitan, you are Satan, because then you are Taghut. And if you're believing in Allah, then it is all right. So that is the kind of deception they play by using the second verse. The third verse that they use is that is from chapter number 109. It's a 6th verse. Unto you your religion, unto me my religion. Again, it sounds very interesting and very peaceful to those who do not know about Islam. Now, when you hear only this much, unto you your religion, unto me my religion, then what happens is those who are uninitiated, they are forced to believe that there is no compulsion when somebody has to be converted. And it is talking about coexistence. Now, but again, there they again play the same trick. Now, what makes it even more interesting is that this chapter number 109, which they quote, the title is Al-Kafirun. Kafirun means disbelievers. And there is a context to it, which makes it doubly interesting. When somebody quotes a few verses from Quran to tell that Islam is inherently violent, they say, no. See, what he is doing is he's quoting these verses out of context. But here they play the same trick. They don't give the context. The context was that there was this person called Muhammad bin Abdullah, who is said to be the prophet of Islam. He was in habit of abusing the gods of the Meccans. The Meccan society before Islam was a society which was almost like the society which we have today in our country. Very open-minded, very pluralistic, worshipping idols, worshipping devis as well as devtas, giving high regard to women. Women had a very high position in pre-Islamic Arabia. But Muhammad used to abuse different gods and goddesses which they were following. So some chiefs assembled, and like any civilized society, they said, let's go and talk to him and his elders, and let us try to put some good sense into him. Now, Muhammad was being brought up by one of his uncles. They went to him and they said that this nephew of yours, what he is doing is he is abusing our gods. Let us come to an agreement that we will worship what he says and let him also worship what we are saying. That is how civilized debate should be conducted, and that is what they were doing. And in reply to that, this so-called loving God of Quran, loving God of Islam, sends this chapter, which includes only 6 verses. And the name of the chapter is Al-Kafirun. Kafirun means people who are not Muslims. And it is used pejoratively for them. Now, what does it say? The chapter says, say, O Muhammad, to these mushrikun and kafirun. Now, mushrik means those who worship anybody besides Allah. So if you are worshipping Ram, if you are worshipping Krishna, if you are worshipping Shiv, if you are worshipping Devi, if you are worshipping Christ, we all are mushrikun. And if you're not worshipping anybody, still you are, then you are a kafir. So kafir includes mushrik. I'm again reading. Say, O Muhammad, to these mushrikun and kafirun. O kafirun, I worship not that which you worship, nor will you worship that which I worship. And I shall not worship that which you are worshipping, nor will you worship that which I worship. Unto you your religion, unto me my religion. This is the entire chapter. Now notice the inherent intolerance of this chapter. But by quoting that one particular verse, they try to project as if it is very peaceful. And this is the kind of ideology which they are trying to defend, which they are trying to protect. And as a result, by removing the spotlight from this ideology, they are trying to shift it to Hindutva. That is what they actually are doing. I think I've taken my time. So what I'll do is I'll just wind it up here. Just make one statement that all of us have to learn the trick. The trick is very simple. When they talk about any other ideology, when they talk about Muslims, bring them back to Islam. That okay, let us talk about Islam. Let us talk about jihad. Let us talk about the violence which is present in it. Let us talk about the injunctions which are given by the God of Quran, by the God of Islam. That should solve our problem. Okay, I rest my case over here.
Thank you, Neeraj ji. Thank you, Neeraj ji. Wonderful. So, so the main problem we have on our side is nobody reads their scriptures as much as we don't read ours. So the deception, as you said, works wonderfully on us. Yeah. So they are able to fool us, and people like you are doing a wonderful job through your YouTube channel, educating Hindus about this thing who don't have time to read all this, go into detail and study all these things. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I know you are very busy with all the other stuffs also, and you have been jumping from meeting to meeting. So I again convey my thanks and gratitude to you. So with this, I hand over to my co-host, Dr. Kiran Patekar. Kiran ji, please take over. Thank you. Thank you, Neeraj ji, once again.
Thank you, Rishikesh ji. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope there are no questions which I have to answer.
I think we are running short of time, Neeraj, so I
Okay, thank you.
I
Thanks
think
a
we'll
lot.
have to pass. Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you very
Right.
much.
Thank you. Kiranji, over to you.